Hello, my name is David Buchanan, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers postseason run. Imagine being told that you had less than a 5% chance of winning the NBA title after falling behind 3 games to 1 against the greatest regular season team in NBA history. No team had ever come back from such a deficit before or faced more adversity than that Cleveland Cavaliers team did. Most would have folded under the circumstances and pressures before even in the finals before it even happened, but yet it Cleveland never gave up, they never waned, and they never gave up hope. And with all that resilience and with everything going on, they actually managed to be able to beat the odds and beat the deficit of 3-1, and they went on to win that NBA championship. And for the online journal articles that I will be using today and be highlighting, I would like to highlight clevelandmagazine.com, medium.com journal, and forbes.com as well. These were the sites that I used to help me with my informative speech. For my main point and my first main point that I want to bring up, the Cleveland Cavaliers absolutely dominated the Eastern Conference that year. They finished with a record of 57-25 and earned the number 1 seed in the East. They faced the Detroit Pistons in the very first round in the playoffs and swept them 4-0. Then they met the Atlanta Hawks in the second round of the Eastern Conference semifinals and went on to sweep them as well. And then the Cavaliers would go on to eventually meet the Toronto Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals, where they won the series 4-2, and it made it Cleveland's second consecutive season that they made it back to the NBA Finals after the previous year in 2015. Uh, Whenever this series had started, the Golden State Warriors were already they were already in the finals because they had came back from a 4-3 deficit against the Oklahoma City Thunder within the Western Conference Finals series. And so Cleveland was already prone to face off with Golden State and everything. It was already set, stone, and match, which was the previous finals as well and everything. To start off with, Cleveland did not play very well at all. In the very first 3 games of the series, they won one of those games, but barely by 3 points. It wasn't a great starting series for the Cavaliers. A lot of struggles for a lot of players, mainly besides LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, J.R. Smith, Richard Jefferson. All those guys had their struggles early within the series, just not hitting shots, just having stuff happen and everything like that. But in game 4, uh, Golden State Warriors went on to win pretty handily, and it kind of it kind of killed Cleveland's momentum they had kind of going in and everything. And then one singular thing I think that kind of sparked everything kind of changing and shifting was whenever a comment was made about LeBron James being upset and mad and everything. Klay Thompson was just like, I guess he got his feelings hurt. And I believe, not that singular particular moment, but I believe that that moment had a pertaining effect towards both Cleveland and Golden State, and it shifted everything for that entire series. So going on with that, as I had mentioned before, Cleveland was facing a 73-9 Golden State Warriors team that had just the greatest regular season in NBA history, beat out the 96 Chicago Bulls that went 72-10 and went on to the finals and won. They Cleveland was down 3-1 against this team. Nobody expected Cleveland to even make it a run or make it a competition or contention or anything like that. No NBA Finals team ever had a 3-1 deficit ever came back in the NBA Finals. There was a historic record of 0-32 of teams who faced 3-1 deficits in NBA Finals. 0 teams out of 32 that played in 3-1 deficits never came back to win the NBA Finals, so it had never been done before. Uh, it started shifting a little bit in Game 5. LeBron James and Kyrie Irving each responded by dropping both over 41 points in their games, which became the very first pair of teammates to ever score 40 plus points in an NBA Finals game, which to me is pretty insane and everything. And then in Game 6, they went back to Cleveland, where Golden State got beat pretty handily. Cleveland went on to dominate that game in Game 6, and I believe they won by 27 points, I want to say, like 27 points. It was a pretty handed, decided victory that led them back to a game seven where it would be back at Golden State. And in this game, Game 7 became one of, if, probably the most memorable NBA Finals game in history because this singular game featured just so many different iconic NBA Finals moments that are just still remembered and spoken to this day, 10 years later, 10 years on. Plays such as Kevin Love's crucial defensive like two stops on Stephen Curry, who at the time was the back-to-back MVP and who was the unanimous MVP. So he was the very first ever in NBA history unanimous MVP that season because of just how dominant their whole team was and how dominant he was. There was another play with LeBron's crucial, famous chase down block on Andre Iguodala. And then obviously, I would say probably the most famous play within that game was the 3 point shot that Kyrie Irving hit over Steph Curry with a little under about a minute left in the game. And that shot was the deciding factor of what won Cleveland that game. And they ended up winning 93 to 89. And they became the very first team in NBA history to come back from a 3-1 deficit in the NBA Finals. I believe this championship lasts a very long lasting legacy. It was the very first championship. It was the championship that ended Cleveland's 52-year major professional sports championship drought. So for 52 years before Cleveland won that championship, their city was completely devoid of championships. The Indians, the Browns, the uh, Guardians, the all these other teams that they had for baseball, for football, for MLS soccer, for everything, they hadn't won any titles or any professional championships or anything in that 52-year span. So it was a long time coming, and it delivered the Cleveland Cavaliers' very first NBA championship. And this championship also cemented LeBron James's legacy as one of the greatest players in NBA history and in sports. It drived it and invigorated it more because of the style and the way he was able to come back and defy all the odds from a 3-1 deficit. And definitely, I would say this became the most memorable NBA Finals in recent history. I would definitely say over the past 10 to 15 years, this became probably the most memorable NBA Finals, and it's still an NBA Finals that is still mentioned over the past decade. Um, yeah, it just shows and highlights how Cleveland dominated the Eastern Conference. They completed the first ever 3-1 deficit in NBA Finals history, and they stuck together through that adversity, and were able to come up on top in the precipice of the basketball world, which is winning the NBA championship, which I just still think is just an amazing feat to overcome a deficit such as that, and just the adversities and everything that would have to go right for you that did go right for them. So it's an underdog story, and I absolutely love underdog stories. And it's just, I believe this is the ultimate underdog story because nobody expected Cleveland to win that championship, especially after going down 3-1 against what was the greatest regular season NBA team in NBA history, the Golden State Warriors during that time. But yeah, no, very, 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 very memorable NBA Finals. And then for my sources, I also would like to reflect on, bring up on sportsyahoo.com as well. It is on a article called Reflecting on the Cavaliers 2016 NBA Championship and its Historical Significance by Chris Fedor. Thank you very much, and I hope you all enjoyed.